You're working on your book. You're on a roll. You have great stories. There's the time you got out of dissecting a frog in 6th grade biology because it happened to be the day your teacher died. There's the time you went over to your friend Carol's and had squirrel for breakfast. The time you got lice and your mother was too embarrassed by the right treatment and bought anti-flu shampoo for dogs instead. You're typing away. The writing is going great. And then, all of a sudden, you get to the boring part. The part of the story you just don't want to write about. No worries, just leave it out. Oh, but that's not going to work either, because your reader is going to feel like they got left out of the story. What happened during those 8 years? It's a conundrum. My name is Wendy Dale. I'm a Penguin Random House author and the author of the Memoir Engineering System, the result of 15 years of research to discover the principles that all written stories rely on. Today, I want to talk about how to skip over the boring bits without frustrating your reader. I'm going to show you how most writers try to skip over time in their book and why they wind up driving their reader crazy. I'm going to teach you how to do this the right way with examples from published books as well as from clients I've worked with. Let's get into this. This tip is so easy to apply that I thought I would start with it. To help you understand this concept, let me use Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential as an example. So at the end of chapter 1, Bourdain is in 4th grade. Turn the page, and the next chapter starts with him graduating from high school. So how does Bourdain do this? Well, let's take a look. Here are the last 3 paragraphs of chapter 1. I'd sit in the garden among the tomatoes and the lizards and eat my oysters and drink Kronenbergs. France was a wonderland for underage drinkers. Happily reading Modesty Blaise and the Katzenjammer Kids and the lovely hardbound bande dessinées in French, until the pictures swam in front of my eyes, smoking the occasional pilfered jeton. And I still associate the taste of oysters with those heady, wonderful days of illicit late afternoon buzzes, the smell of French cigarettes, the taste of beer, that unforgettable feeling of doing something I shouldn't be doing. By the way, he really is in 4th grade. I know he's smoking and drinking, but this is Anthony Bourdain we're talking about here. I had as yet no plans to cook professionally, but I frequently look back at my life, searching for that fork in the road, trying to figure out where exactly I went bad, and became a thrill-seeking, pleasure-hungry sensualist, always looking to shock, amuse, terrify, and manipulate, seeking to fill that empty spot in my soul with something new. I like to think it was Monsieur Saint-Just's fault, but of course, it was me all along. Pardon my French, literally there. So that's how chapter 1 ends. Now, let's look at how chapter 2 begins and see how he manages to skip over about 10 years. So what is Bourdain doing there that allows him to leave out 10 years of his story? Okay, now don't overthink this. I already know what my overthinkers are going to say. Well, there is the reference to smoking and drinking in paragraph 2, which connects to the idea of smoking and drinking at the end of chapter 1. Yeah, not really. But that's not doing as much heavy lifting as you might think. What is really making it possible to jump over a decade here? It's actually pretty simple. It's the chapter break. So, tip number 1. Take advantage of chapter breaks. A chapter break is like a tiny reset button for your story. It's still the same book, but you can pick up at a different place in time. So let's see exactly how he's doing this by going back to the beginning of chapter 2. In 1973, unhappily in love, I graduated high school a year early so I could chase the object of my desire to Vassar College. The less said about that part of my life, the better. Believe me. Let it suffice to say that by age 18, I was a thoroughly undisciplined young man, blithely flunking or fading out of college. So, what is he actually doing here? Well, he's mostly just launching into a brand new story. And so can you. You are the only one who knows all of the stuff that you were leaving out. Believe me, your reader just doesn't care. Okay, tip number 2. So what if you don't have the benefit of a chapter break? What if you were still in the same story? What do you do then? Here is where one of my favorite tricks comes into play. It's called an events paragraph. Now, in order for you to understand why this trick works so well, let me show you what most people do to skip through time and help you understand why it doesn't work at all. So I'll read a client's submission and I will come across a paragraph like this one. 3 years later, I decided to get my master's degree. After 2 years at Columbia, I needed a break, so I went to Europe. There I met Derek, the man who would become my husband. Our wedding took place in the Swiss Alps. 18 months later, our first child was born. Okay, so what did it feel like to read that? For me, the story started to move way too quickly. So the writer is mentioning all of this stuff happening, but isn't letting me live through any of it. So as a reader, I feel left out of the story. I'm going to rewrite that paragraph in just a minute. But first, I want to read a short excerpt to you from an author who gets through time in the right way. So what I want you to do is feel how you actually don't feel left out of the story here. This is from Everything I Ever Wanted by Gillian Lauren. I tour with him all summer and into the fall, curling up in the back lounges of tour buses. I watch columns of light shoot up into the purple sky over the California desert, while the crowd boils and churns and clamors for guitar picks. I gossip for hours with the other wives and girlfriends. I watch Scott ply grungy Dutch clubs and cavernous American hockey rinks, and how bizarre, the site of the Nuremberg rallies. I wake dazed in St. Louis, Toronto, London. Liam Gallagher offers me cocaine in a bathroom in Paris, which I don't accept, but still. I step over passed out topless Scandinavians. I wander the 8th arrondissement, the red light district of Hamburg, downtown Detroit, Walt Disney World. And even though it's not my first time to this particular rodeo, I've been with my rock musician for years now. I still fall in love with Scott anew every time I watch him step onto a stage, into the persona he wore in his childhood dreams. Okay, so why does this work and the previous excerpt that I gave you didn't? In just a second, I'm going to explain exactly how an events paragraph works. Before I do, I want to quickly invite you to my upcoming live class. I would love to meet you there. To learn more, check out the link in the description. So, to create an events paragraph, you need 2 things in your first sentence. Your first sentence is going to include a time period and a point that you are making about that time period. So let me give you some examples. It is the worst summer of my life. So there I've made a point and included a time period. Your time period is summer, and it's the worst summer ever, right? There's the point that you're making. Here's another one. I hate every minute of 3rd grade. Made a point, included a time period. Macrame class is amazing. Again, made a point, included a time period. So how does Gillian Lauren do this? I tour with him all summer and into the fall. We have a period of time and a point that she's making. Now, every sentence that follows in the paragraph is going to include something specific happening during this time period. I tour with him all summer and into the fall. I watch columns of light shoot up into the purple sky over the California desert. I gossip for hours with the other wives and girlfriends. I watch Scott ply grungy Dutch clubs and cavernous American hockey rinks. I wake up dazed in St. Louis, Toronto, London. Again, each sentence is describing something new that is happening to the narrator during this time period. So why does this work? And the first example I gave you didn't. Well, hopefully you felt the difference of what it was like to read the first example compared to the second one. But let me explain to you why this is the case. Well, in the first example, you're using time in a very different way. 3 years later, I decided to get my master's degree. Well, more time passes and something new happens. After 2 years at Columbia, I needed a break, so I went to Europe. Then more time passes and something new happens again. There I met Derek, the man who would become my husband. So the problem is that all of these things are happening, but they create the expectation of us wanting to live through this with the narrator. And because we don't, it feels like the book is moving too quickly. Now, I want you to compare this with our events paragraph. Now, our events paragraph deals with one chunk of time. So first we set up this chunk of time that we're going to cover, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that happened within that chunk of time. So let's rewrite this paragraph that isn't working and turn it into a true events paragraph. The first thing I'm going to have to do is turn this into a single chunk of time, one that's going to make a point. So let's first turn this into a single chunk of time. Well, how do I do that? So in my original, we're dealing with about 6 years worth of time. So now I need to make a general point that is going to encompass this 6-year period of my life. So this is my rewrite. Over the next 6 years, I completed the rites of passage necessary to convert me from a shy Texas girl into an adult. So there I've created my extended time period and I've made a point. Next, I'm going to add in all my events. So here's my final paragraph. Over the next 6 years, I completed the rites of passage necessary to convert me from a shy Texas girl into an adult. I enrolled at Columbia, spent grueling hours poring over research on Goethe and Schiller. I traveled to Europe, practiced my German, and tried exotic foods whose names I still struggle to pronounce. I dated men with foreign names, got married, and then, most life-changing of all, at the age of 28, I became a mother, held love in my arms, marveling at how such a tiny creature could fill me with such hope for the future, and also so much fear. Okay, so here we've gotten through a chunk of time without frustrating your reader, without making them feel like they've been left out of these key events in the story. Now, if you want to really understand why this version doesn't frustrate your reader by creating the expectation that they will live through these events with you, I'm going to suggest that you watch this video next.